think I turned all the things on.
I'm never sure.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh no, chill. Okay. So,
We've either
are you?
got a really big lag or I don't see things coming on.
Uh-oh. Okay. Bear with, bear with. Ah, of course. I see what I did.
I was saying, I
I
hear you
was
coming on now.
I was so worried about all the audio.
There we go.
Yeah, it's business as usual. Stephanie forgets to click something. And I'm the tech person. So, hello everybody. Robin's here. Patrice, hello. Janet. LJ. So good to see you. So, I don't know, did you want to do any quick updates or shall we jump in?
For anyone that's going to ask, I'm going to repost our assignment for next week's reading because remember, we assigned 2 weeks in a row. We're not going to talk about it here. So just go check out the social media accounts or the last video that we did last week for next week's reading assignment because I can't talk about anything else other than what we're here to talk about. It's too exciting. So, Steph, by all means, introduce our fantastic guest.
Our fantastic guest is our friend Alicia Thomas from the Virginia Quilt Museum. Ah!
Oh
We
my
are
God.
so excited you're here.
And where, Alicia, are you currently?
I'm currently hiding at my curator's desk, actually. So I'm in the top floor of our museum, which is a little bit of office space, but also, as you can see behind us, our storage space and our workspace. So I'm hiding up here because my office is on the second floor, and we actually have a program going on right now, right outside my office. And
Oh, I thought you were going to say inside your office.
they may be at this point. Who knows?
Yeah, did you say there was wine at this event? So
There is. It's a really fun event we do once a month called Evening Escape, where you get to have dinner and have a glass of wine and learn a hand project.
oh, how
That
fun.
sounds really fun. Is that really successful for you?
It is super successful, and we partner with our local quilt shop, Patchwork Plus. So they provide the teacher and the kits for everything. And
cool.
so and then a local winery comes and sells glass by the wine or the bottle for us. And it's a great time. It was supposed to be last week, but we got snow last Tuesday and we were closed for 2 days. So we had to move it.
Wow. If you don't mind me asking, how much does that event cost?
I think it is $35 a person, and that includes your meal and the kit. And then if you want wine, you have to buy that separately.
Wow.
Because Virginia liquor laws are very
right.
strange.
Yeah.
That's really reasonable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is.
And how long is it? Like all eat like 3-4 hours?
It's 3 hours. We start at 5, so it goes from 5 to 8, and we say from like 5 to 5:30. It's like kind of arrival time, and people can look around the museum. And then we have dinner at 5:30, and then at 6 o'clock, 6:15, we start the project. So tonight they're doing red work.
Oh, cool.
That sounds super fun. Sadly, when I'm going to be down at your fabulous establishment in November, it will be to host my own event with you.
Yeah.
So I won't get to partake in something else really cool like that.
I mean, you can stick around for a few days.
It might have to be a lot of days though, depending on when the
Yeah,
next
that's
one.
true, because it's normally the second Tuesday of the month.
Yeah, so that might not work out so well unless I don't know about anyone else, but I heard Alicia say that I can move in with her for like 3 weeks if I wanted to stay. Yeah, that's what people heard. I knew. Well, only because I just mentioned it for those listening. I will be down at Virginia Quilt Museum in November. The date in the moment is escaping me.
I want to say it's like the second or the third.
I forget the date exactly, but I'll be hosting an event there for my Young and Millennial Quilters group. But of course, extra people listening, you are also invited to join if that's something that might interest you. There'll be more info and things. Alicia and I haven't ironed out all the solid details yet. But my guess is I won't be surprised if we end up in that room behind you at some point. So that's usually what brings all the boys to the yard is,
Yeah.
getting into the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, I think we'll probably set up a quilt turning up here.
Nice. So everybody
And
wants
then
to converge on Virginia, right? In November.
yeah. Well, and I actually think, I mean, I'm not gonna like blow the lid here, but Alicia, if you're recalling a conversation we had, there could end up possibly being a secondary event that pops out of that at the same time with another friend of ours, if you are catching my drift. Are you picking up what I'm putting down?
Yes.
I probably know about this, but I might not.
You do. Of course you do. Just pretend like you do.
All right. Yeah. Because you know, Alicia, you know when I found out we were going to be interviewing you, at the same time our friends here did. I was like, oh.
That is not true. That is not true. No, what she doesn't want to say is that she just wasn't listening because it was me speaking and I'm easy to tune out for her. That's what she said. Well, before we get into like some actual like rapid fire questions for you, Alicia, I want to show everybody where you are because you moved recently. Did you not?
We did. Yeah, we moved about 8 months ago now. So we moved June 15th was our last day at our old location, and then we reopened here June 29th. So we were only closed to the public for 2 weeks.
Wow. I can't believe it was that fast.
The really crazy part is the first time I saw this building was on February 6th of last year. So from the time I first saw this building until when we actually moved was less than 6 months.
Oh my. Oh my goodness.
That's bananas. Is this showing up okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's our new home. It's the Silver Lake Mill. It's a historic grain mill. This is the third version of the mill.
Oh.
The first two burned down.
Oh.
I mean, mills catch on fire pretty frequently. There's a lot of like dust in the air.
Grain is quite flammable.
Yeah. So the original building was 1822, and that burned in the 1850s, and then they rebuilt it, and then the Civil War happened. And we're in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, which was pretty much all burned.
Oh my.
Yeah.
And Sheridan came through and actually said, don't burn the mill, because the owner was Mennonite. There's a large Mennonite neighborhood here. And 2 weeks later, Custer shows up and is like, I don't care.
Torch it.
Supposedly set it on fire himself. So thanks, Custer.
I'm just curious, this lake here, is this man-made or?
It is. There's a dam. So kind of right next to the right of the mill in that picture, there is a dam. So it's a spring-fed man-made lake. It's kind of hilarious because the mill is located in the town of Dayton, Virginia. This lake is actually the property of the city of Harrisonburg, so the next town over, because the lake is actually the backup water supply for the city. So they own the dam and they own the lake and maintain all of that. So,
and I'm just curious here before I show your other picture from another view. We zoom in here a bit. So how much of the, like, can you get up into this area here as part of the museum?
Yeah, not as part of the museum. So what you're seeing there is kind of actually the side that faces the lake is the back side of the building. So on the front side, there are 4 levels, but this back side is actually our entrance. So that patio there, this is a really old picture before we moved in. So there's now a ramp there and there's railing around all of it, and it's really nice patio space. But so those are our front doors. The bottom level of the mill is not part of the museum. It's an event rental space that like you can have like little baby showers and meetings at.
Do you guys get to use it if it's not rented?
Yeah. We get like so many days a year that we can claim it as
fair enough
space.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And so then we have the top 3 floors. So you can see 2 floors and windows there, and then those little windows up at the top. That's actually where I am right now. I'm up in
Oh.
those windows.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Is the silo still there? And if so, what do you use it for?
The silos are still there, and that little bridge where it says Silver Lake Mill connects over into the silos. They are right now storage. They don't have HVAC out there.
Oh.
We had put in a grant to the state of Virginia to get HVAC out there, and unfortunately, we did not get that grant. Our goal is to get HVAC out there and do a little bit more work and actually move most of our sewing machine collection out there and move our library out there, because there's actually 2 silos. You can't see it in this picture, but there's 2 of those massive silos.
Should I move to the next picture?
Sure.
Me.
But that weird little building on the very top is just like an empty.
Oh, that's my room. Okay.
You could, there's some insulation. It's like just studs.
Maybe you should turn it into like a little guest room for when you need to sleep there, because there's so many things that need to happen. But yeah,
or just Airbnb it.
Yeah. This picture makes the building look way bigger than the front picture does.
Yeah.
So there you can see all 4 floors. That's the dam. You can see the mill wheel. The mill wheel still hilariously works. So it gets turned on about once a month. And in the summer, sometimes we make ice cream with the mill.
Oh, that's cool.
That sounds like the best event ever.
Like an ice cream churn, right?
Yeah. So we
cool.
this year we will be doing that to celebrate our 30th anniversary, because BQM turns 30 this year.
That's so neat. Oh my God. When is that?
August 23rd, we're going to throw ourselves a birthday party, and we're going to have cake and ice cream and a ukulele band.
I'm there. I love it.
Oh, you heard it here first. Steph is adding something else to her calendar this year.
I can make my mother drive. It's all good.
Yeah, come down, have some cake. We're going to have some really cool exhibits. We may have a quilt specifically to raffle that day. The reproduction of the first quilt we took into our collection. So,
oh, that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting idea for marking a big anniversary like that.
Yeah.
It's really just one of my board members wants to make it. It doesn't need to own another quilt.
Fair enough. All right. I'm gonna stop this for the moment so that we can get to some stuff. Steph, fire away.
Yeah.
So Jill wrote this question much more eloquently, but my big question for you is just like, how do you get that cool ass job? Like, how do you become the executive director of a museum?
So I think my background is probably fairly typical. I've got 2 degrees in history. I have a BA from, they're having a really great time down there tonight. I've got a BA in American history from Michigan State University. And then I promptly went right into my graduate degree and have an MA in public history from the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. Because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I didn't want to teach. And so I interned at museums, both in undergrad and in grad school. And but then had the bad misfortune of graduating with my master's degree in 2008. And economy crashed. So I took whatever job I could get, which for me was in DC at the Capitol Visitor Center as a visitor assistant. So I just answered people's questions all day for 5 years. Until the economy got a little bit better and museums were able to hire again. If any of you were looking for museum jobs in the early 2010s, they did not exist. It was real bleak out there. I was really lucky. I got a job from there in Philadelphia at a small museum, again, working in visitor services, so just at their front desk. But it got my foot in the door at a small museum. And from there, I worked my way up into fundraising. So I did events and membership, annual giving, really a little bit of everything when you're working in a small museum. And I was there for about 5 years, and then my husband got a job opportunity back in DC, so we moved back to DC. And at that point, I actually stepped away from museums for about 2 years. I love museums, but they're problematic in some ways. They don't pay really well. A lot of nonprofits. And I just needed a little break. So I worked for another nonprofit that just wasn't a museum as their operations manager. And that job is why I have any idea what I'm doing here. Combined with my education and my other experience, but that job really gave me that administrative background I think you need. Mm-hmm. And that can be really hard to get. Like, they don't teach you in your master's degree, like, right, how to read an insurance policy and like how to talk to your insurance broker or deal with the electrical company or any of the other crazy things I have to do on any given day. So I was in that job for about 2 years and realized that I missed museums, but I also really missed working with people. Because as an operations manager, I was basically only dealing with vendors. I wasn't ever really like dealing with our members for that organization or anything. So I specifically started looking for a leadership role in a small museum. And I saw this job posting. I remember this very distinctly. My husband and I had gone up, he's from Pennsylvania, and we'd gone up to his hometown in Pennsylvania waiting for his sister to have her second baby, to just like be there to like help out. And so we were like living in a hotel suite for a week. And I saw this job and I was like, what about moving to this town in Virginia we have never even heard of? Because like, while we were DC people, we were firmly the Maryland DC people. We didn't go to Virginia. And it took a little convincing because we'd lived in DC and Philadelphia, so we'd been in big cities. But he was like, well, I think you should at least apply. And so I applied and I heard back pretty quickly. I did like a short 10-minute phone call with someone and then had a Zoom interview. And then I was like, okay, I think we should maybe go to this town and like see it. But we also hilariously didn't have a car because we were in Silver Spring, Maryland, and we lived right by the metro station. And I worked in Silver Spring, so I walked to work. My husband was working at the Library of Congress at the time, so he took metro, and so he was like, oh wait, but zip cars don't have enough miles to get us to Harrisonburg and back. So we had to rent a car a few times, and we came out and looked at Harrisonburg, and then I want to say a couple weeks later, I got invited back for an in-person interview that was almost half a day, I want to say. It was pretty long. And then they offered me the job, and I was like, yes, but I have a 2-week vacation planned. So how about I start after that in like 2 months? Because I also had to pick up my entire life and move.
Right.
And buy a car. And this was fall of 2021. So cars were still not easy to come by.
Yeah.
Like twice we had scheduled test drives, and before we could even go test drive things, the dealership would call and be like, don't bother to come. We just sold the car you were going to test drive.
So when did you officially start?
September 20th of 2021.
Wow.
Yeah. So 3.5 years ago.
And you've done a lot in those 3.5 years. The moving alone is like 3.5 years worth of work.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't recommend moving a museum in 5 months. I was working 6 days a week almost all of last year.
Oh, wow.
It was a lot.
Well, I would imagine there's probably some, museum executive directors that in their entire career would never move a museum. So,
yeah, we just really got, and when we first started talking about it, the main reason we moved was structural problems with our old facility. It had an HVAC system that was beginning to die. It wasn't fully handicap accessible. Um, there was still lead paint on the outside of the building.
Did you have a lot of people chewing on the outside of the building?
I have no idea. I don't.
It did have some charm to it. It wasn't it an old. It was the old like courthouse, wasn't it? And then it had the jail. It had like the little jail in it and stuff.
Yeah, it was an old historic home that had been in the 1990s used as the courthouse when they were renovating the real courthouse. There was still a jail cell, and I miss that jail cell sometimes. I was like, man, we could have picked that up and moved that.
Lock the unruly visitors in it.
Yeah. Well, when they first moved in 1995, that jail cell is where they stored the collection because they only had like 14 or 18 quilts.
Oh.
So they just locked them in the jail cell every night.
Wow, you learn something new every day. So do you think, I mean, I just from talking to you, I'm gathering that you're really happy with the move and that like you made the right choice.
We did. So it was really, for us, it came down to we were either going to have to drop anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000 just to fix the HVAC issue.
Mm-hmm.
And our operating budget is like $300 to $350 a year. So, dropping 3/4 of that just to fix one issue, which didn't like fix the accessibility issue. It didn't deal with the lead paint. It was really just not feasible for us. Whereas here, we've signed a long-term lease, so we have a 10-year lease on our space. And, well, yes, now we have to pay rent. We know that expense. And our landlord was amazing to us.
I was going to say.
She's charging like 1/4 of what commercial rent would be on this space. And so for us, it's better to have those expected costs that we know about than huge, massive costs that just come out of nowhere and you have to fix. Mm-hmm. And that's why we ended up moving so quickly, because we were originally talking about moving at the end of the year. And then as we were having those discussions, another HVAC unit died. And it was the one that did our collection storage. And I was like, we can't make it through a summer.
Yeah, it's hot and humid in Virginia.
Yeah. And you see all those boxes behind us? No one else had space to store them, because I called other local museums and I was like, got extra storage space? I'll pay you. I will pay you to get me through the summer. And they were like, we don't have space.
Wow.
Oh, that's rough. And that landlord, didn't you say she did a lot of work to the space for you before you even showed up?
Yeah, so we were really lucky. The mill didn't need anything structural, really. I mean, we had painting and cosmetic stuff done, but she put in a handicap lift for us. So all of our public spaces are ADA accessible. And she also built a very nice ramp to that patio area so that we were handicap accessible to our front door. But also the way our lease is written, anything over $300 is her responsibility. So basically, like, I have to fix a broken toilet. Anything else is her. And she's been great about things. This program I have going on tonight, we started doing in August. And in August and September, it was fine. And then in October, people left at 8:00 at night, and it was dark out.
Oh, yeah.
And we were like, oh, no, we don't have any outside lighting.
Oh.
And because we moved in the middle of summer, we didn't know.
Right.
You could, like, it'd be 9:00 at night and I'd be leaving and I'd be like, it's still fine out. And so I called her the next day and I was like, we need outside lighting. And like, the museum's happy to pay for it, but like, I'm going to call the electrician we use. And she was like, you're not paying for that. She's like, that's a building thing.
She can write it off. So
yeah. She also laughed. She was like, how did neither of us notice that? And I was like, I have no clue.
Because you guys weren't having sleepovers there.
I was like, probably because we're both sleep deprived at this point. But it had not occurred to anyone that we needed outside lighting. And like, no, yeah, you do. So,
you've already actually answered a couple of other questions we were going to ask you. But One you haven't really gotten like deep into yet that we definitely want to know is, can you tell us a little bit about like what on earth you do all day long?
When you're not moving museums.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're a pretty small nonprofit. So we've got 2 full-time staff, that's myself and my curator, and then 1 part-time staff who does about 30, 35 hours a week. And then a whole ton of volunteers who are amazing and do a whole bunch of stuff for us. So our volunteers really run kind of like the front end of the museum. So there are docents, they work in our gift shop for us, which then frees up all of our time to do other things. So my curator deals with all of our exhibitions, whether that's exhibits she's putting on or all the ones we bring in. And she also does all of our collection stuff. And then my other employee, who's my museum manager, does like our group tours and our gift shop, and just some admin stuff. So that leaves me with fundraising. We've got to pay our bills somehow. So whether that's grant writing or annual giving, like our year-end campaign, also getting sponsorships from companies and individuals. So all of that relationship building. A lot of the administrative stuff, the really unfun stuff of like making sure our insurance policies actually cover what we need. Making sure that we have a security system. I have to run our payroll because who else is going to do that? And we need to get paid. So it's a little bit of everything. I am still involved in like all of our exhibits and our collections, so I do work on that a little bit. And then it's sometimes one-off projects. So we've got a really big project right now for the 250th of the American Revolution coming up. I'm primarily the public face of the museum, so I go to 3 major quilt shows a year, sometimes 4, depending on where QuiltCon is. But I go out and I do talks. So if a guild wants to pay me to come, I will come talk to your guild.
Really,
even if you're not
as opposed to your curator doing that?
Yeah. So I'm primarily the one doing that. So it's all just a little bit of everything. It kind of depends on what's happening at any given time and what we're working on. A lot of times it is just like locking myself in my office and writing out a grant application, because you got to get the money somewhere.
How many of those do you think you write in a year?
10 to 20.
Is that a lot? That sounds like a lot.
It really depends. So they can be anywhere from really short to really, really long. I'm working on one right now that's probably the longest I've ever done, and it's 15 questions, and each question is like 3,000 characters, which is a page and a half. So, yeah, that one's a doozy. And then you also have to give them a whole bunch of other stuff. So we have to give them financials, but then they also want to see examples of our artistic excellence. And I was like, I don't fully know what this means, but okay.
It's your flair.
I know.
Look how many pieces of flair I have.
Yeah. So we've gotten last year, Cindy Grisdella, who's a modern art quilter, had a solo exhibit. So she's putting together something about her exhibit here and how that was helpful for her as a quilter. And then we have a really good relationship with Pat Sloan, who is a massive presence in the quilting world. So she's writing another one for me, and then I've still got to figure out the third. Yeah,
that seems like a good strategy.
That weird stuff of being like, who do I have relationships and how can they help us? And sometimes that is as easy as saying like, hey, Pat Sloan, can you write me a 1-page letter of support for this grant I'm applying for? And Pat is always happy to do that for me. or, a lot of my time is also spent networking with different people in the quilt community. So whether that's folks like you guys or other people I meet at AQSG, or other executive directors of quilt museums, we talk like once a month. And so just building those connections so that we all know what's happening in our industry.
And you feel those connections have been valuable to you?
They've been so valuable. So when we were moving the museum, they were the most valuable thing because I was like, you can't see it here, but the first floor of the museum at the mill, all the walls are wood. They're like wood paneling, and it's beautiful, but you can't put quilts against those.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, oh no, I need a hanging system that goes from the ceiling and not the walls. Most museum hanging systems go against walls.
Right.
But I was like, I need 5 inches between the walls and what I'm hanging. And I was like, but you know who else has this problem? The Wisconsin Quilt and Textile Museum, because they're in an old barn. And so I was like, Melissa, system, and who bought it from? I can't find what I need. And she's like, you want AS hanging systems? Here's their website. Here's who you should call. They're amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just things like that, like, because who else knows that?
Right, right. Arlene just commented about Mary Kerr and her work that she does with you guys on Quilt Information Days.
So Mary Kerr is another person who is so supportive of the museum. And so she, a couple of times a year, does what we call Quilt Evaluation Days, which are one of our more popular programs. You have to book appointments, and you get 20 minutes. And in that 20 minutes, we will look at one of your quilts. And it's generally Mary and I, and we will tell you everything we can about it. So mainly the age, and then also how to care for it. Because a lot of times it's people with their family quilts. We see a lot of crazy quilts. So many crazy quilts. And so many crazy quilts that are falling apart, as you guys know, like they're just shattering. And so what we actually spend a lot of our time doing is like telling people it's okay to cut them up and save what they can. And like, especially with crazy quilts, like if you've got something that's got some really nice embroidery and it's holding it all together, like cut that out and frame it, and then you have a lovely thing. But the rest of this is just going to keep falling apart, and you can't do anything about that. So it's okay.
Yeah.
Like a museum is telling you that's okay. But they're really fun. We see a lot of really great quilts. We've actually gotten some quilts for our collection from those days. Because sometimes people come and say, like, we don't know what to do with this quilt that's been in our family. And then we'll be like, well,
as a matter of fact, we kind of like that one.
Was it made in Virginia? So that's always fun. And we do those. We try and have 4 or 5 of those days a year. So I know we've got Mary coming at the end of May. And then I think again in November. But then also our friend Mia is going to do one of those days with us in August as well.
And she also does some sewing machine stuff with you guys, right?
Yeah, she did last year. I don't think we're going to do sewing machines this year, but we've got plans for another fun day that we haven't finalized yet.
Gotcha. Before I take it like way too off track there, Steph, why don't you bring us back to even here with another question?
Yeah, I think that you've answered a lot of our questions, but one thing that I thought of, because you're back, I know you are a crafty person. I know that you do handwork, but quilts are not necessarily your background and certainly not in your education. So, I don't know, was there a gap you had to close, or like are there major differences in how this works versus the Capitol, Visitor Center?
Yeah, so I don't actually quilt. I do some embroidery, and I know how to sew, and I've made clothes before in the past. But I grew up in a family of quilters. My mom quilts, my grandmother quilted. And I've got quilts from a couple generations of my family. They're not good, um, but they're delightful. Um, and so when I was applying for this job, I was like, oh, well, I know quilting and like women's history has always kind of been my thing. So I was like, I feel pretty comfortable in this. And then I walked in and I was like, I need someone to explain art quilts to me. Like, what is this? I've never seen this before. I know nothing. And I was just really honest. I was like, you guys are hiring me because I know how to run a museum. You're not hiring me because I know a thing about quilts. I will learn that.
Mhm.
And so I kind of came in and I was like, all right, I need a crash course in everything quilt related, like the history of it, but also like I really do need someone to talk to me about art quilts and how these came to be. And luckily I just had really great volunteers and board members and staff at the time who were just so helpful. Um, both in like being willing to talk to me about things, and Mary Kerr was one of them. I learned so much from those first quilt evaluation days I did with Mary, because you just see like 15 quilts a day.
Mhm.
And so it's just being around it is how I've learned a lot of it, especially the history and like dating quilts and things like that. You just have to be around it. You can read all the books you want, but unless you're actually seeing stuff, I don't know that I wouldn't learn it just from the book.
Amen.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but then also just trying to find some time to like read uncoverings and read, you know, different things that come out.
Or
And
attend lectures.
yeah, sometimes I go to lectures. Sometimes it's also just like being on Instagram, like being on the museum's Instagram and scrolling through and seeing what's happening there and what's going on. You know, talking to other people and just trying to make time to learn. It's hard. It's the thing that gets pushed to the back burner. I like often wander around with a copy of Uncoverings in my backpack and just never find time to read it. And I'm like, ah, poor thing's been traveling with me for 6 months and I still haven't looked at it.
But then, I mean, like you attend something like American Cult Study Group's annual seminar and
Mm-mm.
jam a year's worth of information into your brain in a few days.
Yeah.
When I left Terrytown and drove home, I literally got in the car, never turned the radio on, and was just in silence. And my brain was going 3,000 miles a minute. And then before I knew it, I was like, how am I in Massachusetts? Who drove the car? Like, because
Yeah.
the processing from stuff like that.
Yeah, so I'm really lucky. I do get to go to generally 2 professional conferences a year.
Mhm.
So I generally go to the Virginia Association of Museums to kind of keep up with the museum side of things.
That's
Then
cool.
I also go to AQSD, the American Quilt Study Group
Mhm.
conference, because I'm very lucky that I've got a board member who pays for me to go. Um,
Wow.
so I don't even like, she books my hotel room. This is why I feel like I sometimes show up at seminar and I'm like, I have no idea what's happening because I don't have to do anything. She takes me like she's just like, be at my house at this time. This is when we're leaving. And it's great.
That's
Wow.
awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, I didn't realize that your job came with like a literal like travel agent, chauffeur, like
This one time a year it does, and it's amazing. But
well,
it was
and
also really funny when we were in Louisville because it was my first time, but I just had put no thought into this. I was like, I have to be at Beverly's house at this time on this day. And then I'm going to this thing that I don't really know anything about and I don't really know anyone at. And then like I showed up and I was like, wait, I'm in Louisville and like it's Bourbon Town and I did not think about this at all. And I was just like, oh, I really just like came on this trip with no expectations or plans of anything.
but hey, that's where we all met.
Yeah.
Yes, it
And
was. I don't know if it was like you had the great fortune or misfortune of meeting us, but
It was great.
well,
but yeah,
I mean,
I like that because I think that when you go someplace with no expectations, I feel like you're the biggest sponge. You're just gonna soak it all in, and
Yeah. It's great.
Well, that and I also believe, at least at the last seminar, you even ended up leaving the auction with some things for your museum.
I did. The museum purchased a roller that was used to print on fabric.
Oh, that's right. I remember the
Yeah.
roller.
Yeah. The funny thing about that is the number of people who came up to me afterwards and were like, please tell me you're not getting on a plane with that. And I was like, I am not. I'm getting in a minivan.
Yes, for those who are watching, the roller was like an old. I mean, was it a chintz? It was for printing chintz
I
or
can
something.
grab it.
Yeah,
Oh, she's gonna
it's
grab
like
it.
It looks like a log, like a fireplace
Yeah.
log, essentially with like bands of metal and little tiny nails on it. I mean, you could just whack the crap out of somebody with it.
Ooh, Leah's coming in with some interesting
Leah.
stuff. Yeah, Leah's coming in. Don't worry, Arlene. I'll make sure that Alicia hears your comment there. Yeah, that thing's huge.
And it probably weighs like 20 to 30 pounds.
I remember you walking away from the stage with that thing like it was like a baby. Like,
It's amazing. We're actually going to play with it in April. We're doing a fiber festival.
Oh, fun!
With one of our neighboring historical locations. And so we're going to figure out how to use this thing.
Bust it out and
That's
print some
really-
chintz.
hey, that's really cool. And I kind of hope you guys take video of that to like put online because your girls here want to see that.
I know.
But we're pretty like solidly booked in April.
Yeah.
Speaking of solidly booked, one of Stephanie's bookings is with the wonderful Leah Zieber, who's in the comments and has asked, is the museum taking antique Virginia quilts in good condition with provenance?
We are. So on our website, there is a collections tab, and there's a form on there that you can fill out, and you can attach some pictures, and that gets sent to myself and my curator. And then once a quarter, my collections committee meets and reviews everything, and that's how we make decisions. So we're really, I don't want to say, we're not taking crazy quilts. Sorry.
I don't think anyone is.
We've got like 40. It is too many. So unless like yours is pristine and was made by someone really cool, I'm not taking it. We're right before we moved last year, we'd actually just finished a project of going through our collection and completing this like rubric about it, about where all the quilts we have are from and what decade they're from, so that we could look at our collection in a really specific way and see what holes we have. So we know like our collection skews towards the Shenandoah Valley because it's where we're located. But Virginia is a very large state. And so like we don't have a ton from the Tidewater or like the Northern Neck or really any place coastal in the entire state. We don't have a ton from Southwest Virginia. So like down past Roanoke where the state just keeps going, and I don't know what happens down there yet, but
it's down in the toe of the state, and you don't want to know what happens.
I don't know what happens down there.
I don't. I've never ventured past Christiansburg. Can't tell you.
Hopefully, Leah, you've written down this criteria here. You're looking for, this is like, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?
Yeah.
Like, you're looking for very specific things.
And we know our collection skews 1800s, so we need to work on collecting 1900s and contemporary quilts. So we're just trying to be a little bit more mindful. But at the same time, if you've got something really great.
Well, and we were teasing Alicia before we went live about all the room she has to grow in that space that she's in.
Yeah, you're seeing probably half to 3/4 of our storage. So our building is roughly 80 feet long, and our storage takes up about 60 feet of it. And right now we just have it in one row. We could easily come out to a second row for most of it if we needed to.
That's a lot of possibilities.
Yeah.
That's so exciting. Yeah. As I mentioned,
That's
I had been down there when, you were in the other building before you
Mhm.
took over, and I had a chance to poke my head in, and I remember being shocked at how small it was. I was like, how do you, manage even a tiny collection of quilts in this little space?
Yeah,
So,
we were quickly running out of storage room at the other place. That was the other really big thing is I was like, we can take maybe 50 more quilts. And here I'm like, not a problem I need to worry about.
when I think about it, actually, I think the last time I was at, well, I say the last time, the only time I've ever been to VQM was probably right after you started working. I believe I went there in October of 2021.
You went you weren't there for AQSG right before I started?
I wasn't a member back then. Louisville was my first seminar as
yeah,
well as
same.
Stephanie's. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if we met and we just didn't know, Joe.
I don't think you were there, or if you were, you weren't in a public space because
Okay.
there were only two people that I saw, working at the
Mhm.
museum, and one of them was someone in the gift shop, very young, maybe 20s, and the woman that answered the door, I'd probably recognize her if I saw her, but she also had a mask on at the time, so
Oh, yeah.
it definitely was not you.
Okay.
I would have remembered. Um, and I also believe she had glasses on. I can't remember.
That
Anyway,
I gotta tell you, that does not narrow it down with my
no,
vote.
I'm sure it doesn't. I'm sure it doesn't. But speaking again, kind of your job and work and things that you're doing at the museum, what do you feel is currently one of your biggest accomplishments since you got there?
I've got two. So clearly moving the museum um, was a huge undertaking that I was not on my radar. Um, when I took the job, I really thought we were going to gear up for a capital campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And then just the more we looked at that building, we were like, oh, we're talking about raising like $1 to $1.5 million to fix everything. That's a lot for an institution of our size. Um, and there was also some strange ownership issues with that building between us and the city of Harrisonburg. Um, that eventually we were just like, it's not worth our time fighting about this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, moving an entire museum in 5 months. I will say caveat that with while we moved in June, we kept our old location through October. So we had a few extra months to clean out and sort stuff out. And we had a yard sale and sold a bunch of stuff because we'd been there for 29 years and museums like to collect stuff, even if it's not in their collection. um, so that, but I'm also incredibly proud of this project we are doing for the 250th. So it's a project we're calling Stitching Together History.
Oh, we can look at that, can't we?
Yeah, you've got a
Okay.
couple.
Yeah, let me pull up a couple of photos.
Yeah, so this is a project that I conceived of in the spring of 2023, which sounds not all that long ago, but feels a million ages ago also. And so the 250th of the American Revolution is in 2026. I know some people aren't thinking about it at all, but it's all museums have been talking about since like 2022, especially in Virginia, because so much of the revolution happened here. And the National Committee for the 250th is a disaster.
I looked at their stuff and I'm like, what about all of the arts and stuff? Like that whole committee is, I don't want to digress us, but that whole committee, they're like travel agents. So they're not arts people. There's only like one museum guy or something. Like I was so confused.
Yeah, they were also getting sued at one point. It's been a mess. And so everyone kind of somehow ended up looking at Virginia to be like, what's happening? And so the Virginia State Committee has actually been really good and been hosting like conferences every year. But so I was like, I don't know how we can take part in this because like we don't have anything from the Revolutionary era. Like our oldest quilt is 1806. And when you have these like big commemorations and celebration, no one loans anything. Like,
Oh.
you know, I think the people that have, if there are quilted things from like the colonial era and revolution, it's like Colonial Williamsburg and Jamestown that have them, and they're going to use them for their own stuff. And like, you can't be mad about that. But so I was like, I was kind of trying to figure out how we could take part in this. And then I happened to be in a meeting completely unrelated to this with someone, and she was telling me how for her quilt guild, when their guild turned 40 years old, they made 40 quilts, one for each year of the guild. And I was like, can I steal this idea? And my original idea for this project is we would make 250 quilts, one for each year of Virginia history from 1776 to 2026.
Wow.
It evolved over time and just became make a quilt about something in Virginia history. Which maybe was actually too broad for some people. But so we put out a call, we had a call for entries, we had some webinars to help people pick topics. Unfortunately, then we did really start moving the museum, and I had to cut back what I wanted to do on this project. But we ended up with 257 quilts. I think we had about like 270 submitted. We did turn a few down. But so we have 257 quilts that are 20 by 20 inches.
And you sent me one, right?
I did.
This one?
Yes.
I love it.
He's so cute.
Before we look at these, just a heads up, Leah said that she will reach out to you or reach out to put you in contact with the person who has the quilt. 1830, unusual with lapis print, provenance with who it was made for. So.
I like it.
We will take responsibility for having made this this connection here.
This deal.
Yeah, we don't have a ton pre 1840, so 1830 is good. And we don't have a ton with lapis.
Very exciting.
Yeah. So this
Tell us about this guy.
This is so cute.
I know. This is one of the quilts that has been made. It was made by a woman named Lisa Arthod, and it's called Ticked Off. And she took the like funny route in this project. And at one point there was a law on the books in the Commonwealth of Virginia that you could, that all animals deserved a day of rest. And so you could not hunt any animals on Sundays, except for raccoons. You can hunt them whenever you want. And so this is a raccoon being like, what the heck, guys?
That is awesome.
It is just amazing. And I've told Lisa this. I was like, if this quilt ever goes missing, it's in my house. I have stolen it.
Any chance you'll be gifted this after the event or anything? Or
she has said I can keep it. That does kind of get into a little bit of a weird ethics issue. I'm not really supposed to collect quilts because I have decision-making power over collection. So there's a conflict of interest there. But the museum may end up keeping this one because the 250 quilts that were made for this that we have will be featured in a book and then a massive exhibition here at the museum in 2026. But we are not keeping all 250 quilts.
Clearly.
That's too many. We do want to keep like probably 8 to like 12 of them. So this may be one we decide to keep.
I love his little like his furry looking chest here, like
his little fingers.
The texture. Yeah, like the texture on things is really cool.
It's really fantastic. I was trying to convince the book is being written by Mary Kerr and Donna DeSoto, who Mary's written numerous books on quilt history and all sorts of topics. And if you recognize Donna's name, she's done the like inspired by the national parks and inspired by the Beatles big quilt exhibits that you've maybe seen. Super lucky to have both of them on my board and be willing to take on this project with me. I did when we started getting these quilts in like November and they started piling up in my office, I had like a small panic attack. I was like, why did someone try and like get me to scale down this project? Do you know how many quilts 250 quilts is?
They're small though, right? Like,
Yeah, 20
yeah.
by 20 inches, but still, it's a lot of quilts to keep track of.
250 if anything is challenging, no matter how big or small.
Yeah. So I'm really proud of this project. I think it's going to be great. There are quilts that are much more serious. There are quilts talking about enslaved people at Mount Vernon. There are quilts talking about the Civil War and other really challenging topics. But then there's also things like that lovely raccoon. Chapstick was invented in Virginia.
In Richmond.
Yep. I mean, there's a little bit of everything. I'm really happy with what has been covered. Because my one thing I've been saying from the beginning is this can't just be about all the dead white presidents from Virginia. Like, that's not what we're doing here. And people apparently really took that to heart, to the point where I had to like start reaching out to people and being like, no, but really, could someone do Thomas Jefferson? Or like, guys, I know no one wants to talk about Robert E. Lee, but we can't talk about Virginia history and not talk about him. And that one was the hardest one to get someone to do.
Especially within the pandemic aura. Yeah.
I was like, we need him in the context outside of the Charlottesville riots and rallies. So
right, but I mean, like you just said, like there's space for all of those things to exist.
Yeah,
in something like that.
Yeah, so it's going to be really great. I think the first draft of the book is almost done. So...
That's exciting. I didn't know there was going to be a book. I know when you told me about the project, I was like, oh man, I want to participate, but I just, at the time I wasn't able to. And I'm excited to see.
Yeah, Schiffer's publishing it for us, so
it'll be a good one then.
Yeah. Donna's, I think, compiled all the information, and Mary's writing some introductions to each chapter. And the introductions are also going to include some quilts from our collection. So some of our historic quilts that haven't been published in books before. So very fun.
So I don't know, Jill, if you had like any final questions, but I kind of wonder if the topic of tough things on quilts, if we could get Alicia's 2 cents on censorship. But I wanted to make sure that there wasn't something else you wanted to talk to her about before we like open that can of worms.
Oh, because you're worried it's going to be a tangent. Okay.
Well, no, I just know Alicia and I are like super fired up about it.
Right. You guys will spin. You guys will spin a bit, and that's okay. So before we get to that, just to make sure we hit some things. Alicia, why don't you tell us about
your favorite quilt?
Yes, you've got favorite quilts. Let me just pull this up here.
We'll see which one Jill brings up first. I'm really bad at picking favorites of anything. Like, I'm one of those people that barely has a favorite color.
Okay, that did not show up the way I wanted to. There we go. I don't know what that was all about.
Yeah.
This one's lovely.
Yeah, so this is Cross Laurel Leaves, and I'm going to have to look at my notes because I
would never begrudge a museum person for not being able to recall all the things off the top of their head.
I don't even try because the collections management database we use, I have the app on my phone. So like, I just have it with me all the time.
Look at you. What are you guys using?
We use an app called Catalog It. It's specifically made for small museums.
I'm on it.
It's amazing. I highly recommend it. I've recommended it to, the Pacific Northwest Quilt and Textile Museum.
I'm totally looking into that.
And it's also very reasonably priced, like $600 a year, I think. which for collections management is really good.
Well, I know like some small collectors were even talking about some of the stuff that they use for that. So
Yeah.
anyhow, I digress. Please continue.
So this one we've got a date on of about circa 1840, and it was made in Winchester, so just up the road from us. And this one we actually know who made it. So it was made by Julie Ann Frederick Faulkner. Man, people's names.
The Faulkners. I actually grew up with some Faulkners.
Yeah. And the family history is that she made it for her marriage in 1837. But I just really love it because it looks so modern with the pink and the blue. It also has really amazing quilting on it, and I'm a sucker for good quilting.
Yeah. Yeah, you sent us a close-up.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. Look at how tight.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And then this little, what is this, like it's a bow right here?
I think it's another flower. It's
Oh, yeah, maybe.
yeah, like a sunflowerish type of thing.
Looks like they did echo quilting kind of along the outside of those
Yeah.
things.
So it's just one of those quilts that, so many people think everything before the Civil War was brown, and I'm like, but look at this!
Yes.
It's pink and it's blue. And this is one that we're this summer. One of the fun things we're doing for our 30th anniversary is we're having some barn quilts made based on quilts from our collection.
Oh, fun!
So this is one of the blocks that's going to be made into a barn quilt, and then they're going to be up around Dayton for the summer, and then we're going to sell raffle tickets for them, so you can, buy a raffle ticket and then maybe win a barn quilt.
That's really fun.
Awesome.
They're not going to be huge barn quilts. They're going to be 2 feet by 2 feet, so like a reasonable size. Because I know some barn quilts are like 4 feet by 4 feet, and I was like, I don't know where we would put those.
Dragging your barn quilt behind you.
Does that mean that by the end of that you guys will have one like actually on your building permanently?
Oh, so we have a barn quilt of our logo. It's just on the other side of the building from that picture. Also, that picture was taken a while ago before that was put up.
Gotcha.
The one thing I will say is we don't have a great picture of the mill as the museum yet, because every time we get photos taken, it is a gray overcast day. And I'm like, the building's kind of grayish white, and it just all kind of blends in.
And then you have the reflection off the water of the building and the sky.
And I'm like, I just need you to come out when it's really nice out and just take pictures of the outside.
That's quite the struggle, huh?
Yeah.
So you said that you had a tie for quilts you loved.
Oh yeah.
Oh, look at this one. I didn't see this one out of the
Yeah.
Is this the close up? Did you send me an out?
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh my goodness, look at this.
So this quilt I love because it's stunning, but also just the story of how we got it was very funny to me. In like 2023, I one day just answered the phone. The phone was ringing. I answered. And it was this very nice woman who said, I have a quilt I think you should have. And I was like, tell me more. And she was like, I don't know, it's old. It was made in Virginia. And she said, I'm not a quilter. And I was like, okay, well, what does it look like? And she was like, I really don't know how to describe this.
People find it really hard on the phone.
And I was like, well, how old do you think it is? And she was like, I have no idea. She said, but I'm coming to your area next week. Can I just bring it with me? And I was like, I really hate doing this because then like sometimes you have to disappoint people in person. And I'm like, fine, if you're coming, fine. I'm too nice. Sometimes I just say yes to people. And I was kind of, and like, that's really all she told me. She was like, I can't really describe it. I don't know how old it is. So I was like, all right, this woman's going to show up and I don't know what we're going to be looking at. But the day she happened to come, 2 of my board members were here who are both AQSG members, and we were working on our collections. We were starting to do some condition reports and update some stuff on our collections. So we were at our old location. We were down in the basement working on stuff, and she came in and she had it wrapped in like a sheet, and she put it down on the table and started unfolding it, and we saw like a corner, like maybe 4 squares of it and the border, and we were like, yeah, we'll take it. But I was also like, I didn't really know what I was looking at. I was like, I have no idea like what to date this quilt as, because it's so vibrant. There's so much going on. It's pretty big. It's like 90 some inches. So I was like, all right, I know it's old because it's huge.
Oh my gosh, those little I guess, well, it's not really a mariner's compass. I guess it's more of like a
we're calling it a sunburst.
Sunburst,
yeah. So it's 90 by 95 and a half inches. It's in almost pristine condition on the front. There's some staining on the back, but nothing has come through to the front. There's a lot of chintz in it. There's a lot of really expensive fabrics in it. There's also a lot of fabrics in it. And so she was like, all right, well, you guys can have it. And we were like, no, we desperately want this, but you need to go take it and get it appraised. And she was like, it's not worth that much. You should really, and we were like, no, your tax man is going to kill you if you don't get this appraised before you donate it to us. And the way it works with museums is I can't give you a value.
Right.
And you have to have the appraisal done before you donate it to us. And I was like, here's what we can do. Like, I know a whole bunch of appraisers. I can give you the list. If you want me to take temporary custody of this, I can do that. And they can come look at it here and do their appraisal while I'm holding it for you. But like, I can't take full possession of this until you get it appraised. And so she got it appraised, and then she hilariously called me and was like, thank you. And I was like, let me know when I need to sign some tax papers for you.
She was like, this whole thing, $50.
You know, it's funny. We recently had a conversation similar at NEQM too, where it's like, you know, this is for your benefit. Wink, wink. Please take the advice. Don't, you know, like you must. I know it's a hassle, but like, please. I really want to see this thing in person. Alicia, can we come next week?
I mean, you can come next week. I won't be here next week. I will be at a quilt show.
Oh, even better. We'll just be like, we're gonna just like go rummage through the storage. Alicia said it's fine.
Yeah. Alicia said we could play with this one. We could just take it with us.
And then the other thing we were just gonna look at real quick here is the Hello Computer. Like, open the stuff I want when I want it. Thank you.
The little showstopper.
Yeah. Explain this one to us.
And so this is probably our most famous quilt here at the museum. It's called the Shenandoah Botanical. It was made in 1846. I'm going to double check that date. But it's stunning. It's clearly, you know, in the Baltimore album style. But those rainbows, like, have you ever seen rainbows on a quilt like this from the 1800s?
It totally gives me Rainbow Bright vibes.
Yeah.
The colors are so vibrant in this quilt.
What do we call this block here? Like the lollipop tree?
It's in a tree of life,
but it looks lollipoppy. Like,
they are indeed lollipoppy.
They are.
I really like this one too up here. Looks like a sunflower. Yeah, these flowers are kind of bananas. Steph, what were we looking at? Or were we in a lecture or something where someone was talking about the flowers being cut out of paper or something in some museum collection?
Oh gosh, I don't remember. Asking me to identify any one thing, like
Well, the reason I just bring it up is because like some of these flowers here, like, they look so like pristinely like executed that I feel like it's that kind of paper cut.
Yes, I remember what.
Yes, some famous botanist or something.
Yeah. I remember
Yeah.
now what you're talking about. Now I can't start it on the tip of my tongue, and I can't think about where we saw it. But yes, and what I can say, because not only have I seen this quilt up close and personal, I think everything in there except for the pineapples are botanically accurate to the Shenandoah region of, they represent a flower or some, type of plant that's there in the region. And some of those pieces are very tiny, very slender, lots of pieces involved. And so I have the pattern. I participated in a show at the museum. It was before Alicia's time. But all I've really managed to make is the rainbows and the pineapple blocks because think about a Baltimore album quilt. There's just a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of little pieces.
And are these all labeled or are these signatures?
No, they're labeled with so they say like tiger lily and sunflower and and
wow.
then in the rainbows it was made in 1858. I misspoke a little bit. In the rainbows is made by Esther Matthews, 1858. She was 82 years old. Good for you, Esther.
Wow.
Was it made for her grandson or one of her sons? I can't remember that detail.
The name of her favorite grandson, A.B. Martz, is in the rainbow block as well. Right. And yeah, it's just a stunning quilt. It's in really good shape as well. Clearly, even in the 1860s, they were like, let's not sleep under grandma's precious quilts.
It was just for pretty, like our friend Barb says.
Absolutely. That is definitely a just for pretty quilt.
How often do you guys put this one on display?
We don't have a set schedule. It kind of depends on what exhibits we have. It hasn't been on display in probably a year and a half. It might come out this fall for an applique show we're doing, but it might not.
I mean, is there a chance it could come out for a Young and Millennials event in November?
Yeah.
Because I think this would definitely be most of the demographic that might be coming to that. They don't necessarily know that they like antique quilts because they just haven't been exposed to things aside from crazy quilts or just your average everyday log cabin kind of a thing. So that also I just want to see it.
Yeah. If it's
it is
in
stunning.
the exhibit, we can pull it out for you.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay, you officially have my permission to discuss censorship now.
To scream and yell about censorship, yeah. Real quick, Leah asked, and I'm assuming this was about the 250 project. What if you made a reproduction of a quilt or coverlet from the era? I remember you had categories, and you kind of talked about this. But did anybody take that? Did anybody take that route?
I don't think anyone made a reproduction, but they did. We have a handful that are really quilt based. So we have a couple Virginia reel blocks, and a couple other ones. I'm trying to remember what blocks they are, but a couple more historical blocks just talking about the history of quilting. But then also some more contemporary ones, like there's one in honor of Jenny Beyer that's made with Jenny Beyer fabric in a very Jenny Beyer style. But then also one in honor of Pat Sloan. So some people definitely dove into the quilt history of it. Gotcha. And that was really fun. And one of the things that I'm still kind of trying to figure out how we're gonna really do this, but one of the things I want to really talk about with this project is how the bicentennial in 1976 really helped the quilt revival, and we would not be where we are today without that. So I've got some plans, but I'm not ready to talk about them publicly yet. So more to come.
Well, if there's anything I can help with, because I am doing bicentennial research right now, so.
Ooh, yes. Yeah.
Thank you to the universe and all of the wonderful people that have thus far supported sending me things and telling me things. So,
yeah.
So talk to me about censorship. I remember when I discovered, and you guys know, we're talking about the AQS situation from recent. I know the day that I got all like "Wah!" about it, I think you were also getting all like, what the heck?
Make sure that you give some context here about what you mean by the
So
AQS.
yeah, so AQS, there was SAQA, the Studio Art Quilt Association, has very frequent shows. They have lots of different shows. I'm a member. And one of their shows that had already traveled quite a bit, it had been at in Houston, not this recent one, but the year before. It had gone down and done a real circuit of Australia. And the topic was basically red. It was looking at the color red. And I think it's called Color and Context or something like that. And so, I mean, what you would expect from the color red, I mean, it evokes a lot of different things for people. Lava, blood, and so one quilt is specifically about reproductive rights. Like, there is no other way to interpret that quilt. The artist statement is like, this is about reproductive rights. The other quilt really is not specifically about any one thing, and it's kind of like you look, and it's a quilted object. It's not actually a quilt, but when you look at it, you're kind of left to your own devices to decide what it is you're looking at. So AQS, of course, is a major player. Paducah, Kentucky. It's kind of like the contemporary traditional quilting mecca, and they have 5 different shows that are in different areas. The first one was going to be in, I think, Daytona in Florida was the first one.
Daytona starts their year.
I think they do Branson, Missouri, Paducah. I think there's something in like somewhere in Michigan. Anyway, They said, great, SAQA, they're getting ready to ship these quilts, but leave those 2 out. We're not going to show those 2. And SAQA was like, excuse me. And apparently they had signed a contract, and I don't know if maybe you can speak to that a little bit, but when you get an exhibit like this, like you're not supposed to pick and choose. And
no,
yeah.
One of the things with SAQA's exhibits is they're juried.
Yes.
So like each exhibit has a juror who selects from however many entries they get, which for SAQA I'm assuming is a couple hundred probably for each
I'm
show.
sure. Yeah, I'm sure.
And like I think this exhibit is probably 40 pieces or so.
Yeah, I can't remember how many it is, but something like that.
So like it's already been like it's an exhibit in a whole. You're not, and I'm pretty sure because I've signed SAQA contracts. This is one of their global exhibitions. We haven't had one of those, but we get their regional shows frequently, and it's the same contract. And it says in there that you have to take the whole show and display the whole show. So
by AQS, so this is again the leadership of AQS, which are 2 young men who are the grandson and the grandson-in-law of the original founders, and they've only been around since '84. And to clarify, I may be preaching to the choir here with our folks, but to clarify, AQS is a for-profit entity. So their shows are, about enriching their organization, whereas you are a nonprofit and have, I would guess, a very different view about accepting a show. And obviously being in breach of contract, you probably think about that differently too.
I do. So we've displayed pieces that I would say are much more controversial than what AQS just censored. We have a biennial, so every other year, fiber art show that is an open call for entries. It'll be happening next. We had to, with the move, our exhibit calendar got a little screwed up, so we had to push it back a year. It should have been in 2025. It's going to be early 2026 now. But so the last one was 2023, and we had 2 pieces in it that directly talked about women's healthcare and abortion access. One is by Kathy Nadia, who has had things censored by AQS before. The other was comparing abortion access to gun control. So it hit 2 topics all in one quilt, and there was no getting around it. Like there were words on that quilt. And, it's what the juror picked out of what was submitted. And we hung the show, and I was just like, if anyone has a complaint, send them to me. And that show was up for 4 months, and we never got any complaint. One person reached out to a board member and was mad that we had featured one of those two quilts on our website under the exhibit, and I was like, that quilt also was tied for best of show. There was no way I wasn't putting it on our website. And also, if you have a problem, you can reach out to me, not my board. Like, if you have that much of a problem, otherwise I'm not taking you seriously. Like, if you want to complain to me, that's fine. But I think quilt museums straddle a weird place sometimes. Like, are we a history museum? Are we an art museum? This was very clearly an art show. It was a fiber art show. We bill it as a fiber art show. And to me, it's art, and I'm not going to start censoring art. And I've had that discussion with my board. We right now don't have a written policy, but we are working on one. And we're basing it on what the Wisconsin Quilt and Textile Museum has, which they got theirs from the American Alliance of Museums. But basically just a policy saying we won't censor things. At the same time, we're not going to display hate speech. Right. So there is a line there. What AQS was censoring came nowhere close to hate speech in any way. No. No. And the other thing is, I was like, AQS just shot themselves in the foot, because the one that was clearly about women's healthcare just looked like a normal art quilt. And we all know people don't read.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
if you did not read the artist statement.
I did not.
I hadn't.
When people started freaking out about it in my Facebook group, and then also I saw, like, Stephanie told me, I don't pay as much attention to show stuff as other people do. So at first I'm like, what's going on? So, like, I'm typing and I'm like Googling. And when I first saw the quilt, I actually thought the image was censored. And, like, they put that,
Oh, she had put, yes, the artist actually
pixelation.
This,
yeah, I thought someone had put that pixelation over the image of the quilt, and I'm clicking on it, and I'm just like, why isn't it, like, giving me, like, permission to, like, take off this thing? And then once I realized, like, oh no, that is what the quilt is, I was like, I would never just assume that this had anything to do with that, unless I'm reading the artist statement.
Yeah.
Like, and then the second one, when Stephanie was like, so what do you think about this one? And because there was this big thing when, like, oh, there's another one. When I first looked at that, I guessed it was about something totally different. Because I was like, oh, it kind of looks like, I think I actually said it kind of looks like a brain, like it could be like a brain.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It did have sort of an organic, like,
yeah, that's kind of what it looked like to me.
And of course, that's the thing. If your mind is going to go to that place, your mind's going to go to that place. I mean, I looked at it and I saw what, knowing that it was censored, I saw what they probably saw. When I showed it to my husband, he's like, I don't know what the hell that is. It's like a big red blob. Great.
Well, but see, but that's just the thing, is at the time, remember, you showed it to me and I didn't know it was censored or why. So if we're always discussing kind of, you want people to react to art, and, like, what is their first reaction? How do they interpret? Like, neither one of those gave me any kind of reaction like that. Is that person in the background coming to bring us snacks?
I believe she is bringing leftovers up to our fridge.
Yeah, like, I could have some snacks.
We don't mind her, but she might not want to be on the internet, so.
Yeah.
So that just reminds me, Steph, it's probably a good time for you to just stick your Twitch or your YouTube handle into the chat there, just because Stephanie did at least one stream, if not two streams, about this issue, right?
And I got censored while I was talking about censorship. It was the craziest darn thing. I was like, you can't make this up. I mean, it's ridiculous. So, yeah, that was something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, make sure you
also say, if you are interested in seeing this exhibit, Mancuso, which is another company that runs some quilt shows, has stepped up, and they are having it at the Mid-Atlantic Quilt Festival, which starts next Thursday.
Wow, that was a last-minute scramble.
Yeah. I will also say I dearly adore Mancuso and everyone that works for them. They've been super supportive of the museum long before I was involved. So I will be at Mid-Atlantic. I'm there every year. I will be there all week. We have a table in the lobby. You can come see us. You can buy some BQM branded stuff. I may have candy to give out if I can get my life together this week.
That's how you're trying to lure people to the
Hey,
shows.
come answer a quilt trivia question. I will give you a mini candy bar.
Oh my.
Do
That's
not underestimate the power of a mini candy bar.
Yeah. You know, Mancuso does a show up in Mass here that's out in Springfield every year.
Okay.
I've never been to it. Springfield is a big city. So I've heard it's a good show, but like maybe I'm wondering if they'll have the Sakwa show there. It's usually in like August or September, I think, that show.
Yeah, I don't know if they signed on to do it at all of their shows because they do a handful. They do, I think Mid-Atlantic is their biggest. They do one in South Carolina. And I think they maybe do one in Pennsylvania. I'm never quite
maybe.
sure.
Yeah, maybe.
There's been all kinds of weirdness in Pennsylvania quilt shows in the last few years, so but it's funny that like they stepped up at the last minute because when all of that was going on, I mean, there was a part of me that was like, all right, somebody like everyone was so outraged. I'm like, if we all donated $5, we could just rent out some big venues across the country and just send this thing on its own tour. Just as, and I'm gonna be a little vulgar here, like just as a big like FU, you know, to the establishment.
Our friend Barb is here. Barb said Mancuso in Oaks, Pennsylvania in September.
There you go.
Yeah.
If they're in September, then I have a feeling that the one I'm talking about in Springfield, Mass is in August.
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess.
I will say just like props to Mancuso because they just let me do what I want. Like they give me a table because I'm a nonprofit, but I'm not really supposed to vend. But I was like, hey, can I sell stuff? And they were like, yeah, just don't sell anything that competes with our actual vendors. And I was like, cool. And then this year I was like, can I give out candy? And they were like, yeah, sure. But also I'm like, can I have a second table? And they're like, yeah, we'll find space. And they give us an exhibit for free every year. And like, they are just really supportive of nonprofits. I've also heard from numerous people that teach that they're really good to teach for. They're kind of one of the best companies. So like, you know, maybe think about supporting their shows as opposed to AQS, who's gonna censor stuff. And I know that kind of sucks because sometimes AQS is all you have and you're
sure. Yeah. And well, I mean, and they do, I mean, they're sometimes for profit does offer some interesting things. I mean, they've got the appraisal program, they've got, you know, lots of educational, you know, offerings and things. And it's unfortunate because I think that there's room for everybody, but taking a stand like that really leaves a bad taste in people's mouth. And I mean, your example of, you know, hanging a show in what's essentially rural mountain town in Virginia. I mean, Virginia right now, and I'm not going to get political here, but Virginia is considered kind of a blue state because of the density of Northern Virginia, but everything else in Virginia is awful red. And if you got no complaints about something like that, then it's like this sort of Midwest decision feels...
Yeah.
Well, it really kind of tells me that more people can handle art than some people think can handle art. Because I would say for some people, like I know tons of people that almost would never read an artist statement. They're just going to look, they're going to have a reaction, and they might get the person's name and then they move on. So the people that are going to read an artist statement are like involved in the art they're looking at. So if you have people that are just like, hey, that's pretty, and fine, let it go over their heads. Yeah. But if you have people that want to get engrossed in, you know, whatever the artist was thinking, doing, seeing, experiencing, both things can be true at the same time.
Yeah. And nobody said you have to go to a quilt museum or any museum for that matter and love everything you see hanging on the walls. It's okay to go, I hate that. That makes me mad. And here's why. That's your right.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, I talk about this a lot with both actually my collections committee and my education committee, is there's a difference between your personal opinion and what is best for us as an institution. My personal opinion has no place in the decisions about our exhibitions or what we collect. I don't care what I like personally. It, you know, and so I have to remove that from when I'm making those decisions. And if you can't do that, you shouldn't have authority in these things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, you just shouldn't.
That is
And it's
such a grown-up
sometimes.
thing to say, where I'm just like, these... I'm not going to use the words that I used, you know?
Yeah. And I try really hard. Like, I don't even, if we're like exhibiting something or collecting something that I don't personally like, I don't tell anyone that besides my husband, who's never going to tell anyone because he's the most introverted person in the world. Um, but like, that's not a thing that like even my staff needs to know
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want that to bleed out in any way. So it's just like, we've had exhibits that I'm like, this is not something I would care to see if I was coming as a visitor. That doesn't mean it wasn't a great exhibit. It's just not for Alicia. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
No, there's plenty of times that the NEQM, I'm really fortunate that they let me, share and stream pretty much anything that I want, even though I'm constantly like, are you sure? Pam is always like, yes, please share, stream, blah. There's plenty of show. I mean, God, we've already probably in the last year looked at at least 10 shows from there, if not more.
Mm-hmm.
And there's things that I'm just like, but we still look at them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we still talk about the technique and the this and the that and maybe the artist statement. And we've looked at some semi-controversial looking things. And I say controversial because that's really a subjective point at this point. But yeah, plenty of stuff that I'm just like, but that's just my personal taste.
Yeah.
And that means I'm going to start saying that, like, that quilt is not for Jill.
I like that. I like that.
That
Yeah.
should be like the code now. Like, if you're being like, so we got this quilt, and be like, is that quilt for Alicia?
No.
This is actually a saying I've stole from one of the things that I really love is romance books. Like, this is what I don't really watch TV or movies all that much,
I can totally see this about you.
but I read a ton. But like, there's a lot of romance out there, and some of it is just not for Alicia. Like, I'm sorry, stalker romance is never gonna be for me.
Are you not like a Harlequin romance kind of gal?
I can be. It depends. Yeah. There's like, romantasy is never going to be for me. I'm not a fantasy person. I've never had that.
Romantasy. I like that.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's like,
So,
when
like,
the dragons and the orcs are falling in love.
So that means like Twilight wasn't your jam.
no, there's also, this is getting way off topic, but there's like a whole bunch of like shapeshifter romance where like you're falling in love with werewolves. No, I need humans.
Got it.
This is really going to be like our thing now. I think almost everything that I come into contact with Alicia in the vicinity, I'm going to say like, is this for Alicia? Like.
And sometimes it's not, and sometimes it is. But yeah, I'm just like, that. Bringing it back to museums, that doesn't really have a place in my museum. It's not.
Janet wants to know if you're into the Fae.
I'm not into the Fae. Sorry, Janet.
That's the later years of True Blood is when the Fae show up. Yeah.
Yeah, I like everyone to be human all the time.
Not just on Tuesdays.
Occasionally a vampire. That's as away from humans as I get.
Wow. Well, I mean, this sounds like a pretty good note to like wrap things up on, because we're also, pushing, 8:40 here. But I think like one last thing to like end on would be if you could tell the public one thing that they don't know about your museum.
Oh man, one thing they don't know.
I was going to say, don't act like you didn't get these questions ahead of time.
I know, but this is a hard one.
This is the one where she was like, they won't ask this one.
I think this is probably a good thing in the current political climate, but we get basically no support from the federal government or the state government. We are almost 100% funded through individuals. We get some grants. Those often come from foundations and corporate foundations. We did get some state money for the 250th project through a grant for that. And we've gotten money from Virginia Humanities, which is the statewide humanities organization before. But on a regular basis, we're not getting any government funding on any level. So yeah, it's all you guys out there keeping the lights on and paying our bills.
That's really good to know.
So
And
Janet,
that's probably true for a lot of small museums and a lot of textile museums, because like I said before, we fit in a really weird place and sometimes people don't know what to do with us. Like, are we arts? Are we history? Are we humanities? Who knows? We're a little bit of
all of the
Yeah,
above.
everything.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
yeah.
Yeah.
Other than that, I would say we collect modern quilts. We don't have a ton, and that's maybe a whole other separate conversation about the IRS being dumb. So just really quickly, if you're an artist who makes contemporary quilts and wants to donate them, you could only like write off the cost of the fabric basically. Whereas if you're donating a historic thing, you can write off what it's appraised for.
Oh yeah, that's really problematic.
It's a real problem with collecting contemporary pieces, and like we don't have a budget to buy. I mean, really, the only people who are buying is the International Quilt Museum on a regular basis, anyways. So yeah, but we collect contemporary. So the newest quilt in our collection is 2017. So, and I'm hoping we can build on things made in the 2000s in the next couple of years.
Ooh.
Awesome. So real quick, Janet asked a question. So we've already lured some people to Virginia. She's going to be in Virginia Beach a few times this year. Are there hotels nearby to stay? As a matter of fact, Harrisonburg is a college town. So although it is rather rural, yes, there are things there.
Yeah, so we're in Dayton, which is about 5 miles from Harrisonburg. In Dayton itself, there is not a hotel. Dayton is tiny. It's like 1,200 people in the town of Dayton. But in Harrisonburg, there's the Hotel Madison, which is at James Madison University. It's the only hotel in downtown Harrisonburg, so like you can walk to restaurants and stuff from it. Everything else is going to be out kind of in like a mile outside of downtown, but there's all of your chain hotels out there. Do look at JMU's calendar. Like, don't come May 15th through 17th. That is JMU graduation. You cannot get a hotel room already. And you don't want to deal with traffic. And if I could get away with not leaving my house for those 3 days, I would. You also don't go to a restaurant. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of hotels. There's also actually here in Dayton, just like a mile from the museum, there's a really nice bed and breakfast. It's called the Silver Lake Bed and Breakfast. The owners are really great. They've donated like an overnight stay to a raffle we did before.
Aww.
It is pretty small because it's a bed and breakfast. They only have like 5 rooms, so sometimes they're just booked. But it's really nice. It's where some of my board members stay when they come to town. So yeah, there's tons of places.
There's also a big quilt shop too, right?
Yeah, we are located a mile from Patchwork Plus, which is the largest quilt store in Virginia. So you can come see us, get all inspired, and then go buy some fabric.
Love it.
Which is, you know.
Well, and also, Janet, when you go there, make sure you ask if Alicia's in the building and like be like, oh my God, I was watching your interview on Quilt Nerding.
You can always drop our names.
Yeah, I will pop out if I am able to. And really the only time I'm not here is like sometimes if a grant deadline is coming up, I will work from home and be like, don't call me.
Yeah, we got to get that money.
Yeah, or if I'm out at a quilt show.
So. Well, this has been a delightful. I'm actually really sad that it needs to end, but like
I know.
people need to go home.
Yeah.
I
Like,
need to go home.
yeah, like you've been there since what time today?
8:15.
Yeah.
So we've
Wow.
exceeded
Thank
your
you.
12-hour day, so we appreciate
Yeah.
it.
No, thank you so much for coming on. Like this was you're the first museum director for us to have on the show, and you said a lot of very enlightening things
Yes.
because who had any idea what the heck a director does all day? I sure didn't.
I mean, I'm still figuring it out some days. So, you know, some days it's just dealing with whatever problem has arisen.
I guess that really is kind of the short and sweet is like just problem solver slash like keep the lights on doer.
Yeah, and there's like weird things like, are we going to close for the snow? Are we not? Or like, does the museum need to put out a statement about censorship while all of this is going on? We didn't. We didn't feel like it got to the point where we needed to. But like, I was definitely calling board members and being like, you guys are seeing this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, let's make sure we're all on the same page. So, yeah. I often plan a week and then it falls apart by the second day.
Because every day is different. Every single minute is different.
And then you end up with the Mondayest Wednesday ever.
Thank you, Kate. My staff is also finally leaving.
Well, I mean, we should allow you to go enjoy those parking lights outside that light up the night sky. We're getting quite a lot of like super interesting things. Great discussion. This has been really
Good.
interesting. So we'll definitely have to have you back on sometime to tell us more juicy things because we didn't really get to some of those juicy things.
Yeah, so also because I've worked so long in visitor services and like front facing positions in museums, I can tell you so many crazy visitor stories from
Wait,
so
yeah.
many different
We
places.
should probably just do a whole show of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How quilt people think of the public.
yeah. It's fantastic.
Well, thank you so much, Alicia. I really appreciate You're such a
Yes, thank you so
fantastic person.
You
Mwah.
are. You're such a good friend. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you guys. This was fun and I'll come back anytime.
Awesome.
Thank you so much,
visit
everybody,
the
for being
VQM,
here.
guys.
Yeah, follow us on Facebook, Instagram.
Absolutely. Right. Bye, guys.